Once you've modified your barrel, it's time to start packing your materials into the barrel. You can use our handy downloads to figure out which layers go where, but it's very similar to loading a kiln. You'll start at the bottom and work your way up to the top. There are two ways to load your barrel. You can fire just for smoke, getting black, whites, and gray colors, similar to this piece here. Or you can add other materials, which we'll talk about in more detail a little bit later, to add colors to your pieces as well. So let's first talk about firing for smoke for the blacks, whites, and grays. You'll start with a layer of sawdust. I like to use bedding for animal cages. I just have a big bag of bedding that I get. I'll pull it out and pack in maybe 3 or 4 layers of this sawdust or these wood chips in the bottom of the barrel. Then I'll add a layer of my pots, do another layer of this sawdust, another layer of pots, sawdust, until I reach maybe 7 or 8 inches from the top. Once you get near the top of your barrel, you'll want to start putting in smaller pieces of wood to act as kindling. Small branches, little pieces of scraps of wood. We had a bunch of these laying around, so I just packed these in as well for my kindling. And then you can put the larger pieces of wood on top of that, almost like building a campfire on the top of your barrel. You'll want to be careful as you build these. If they're coming out of the barrel, you'll just want to make sure that they're not going to fall out of the barrel as you're firing and that everything is right above the barrel so that it falls into the barrel as the fire is going. If you're firing for colors and textures, it's very similar with the addition of a few items. You will still start by adding 3 or 4 inches of the sawdust at the bottom, layering in your pots, and then you can start layering in other materials. We'll talk about the other materials that you can use to add colorants in just a moment. You'll add your colorant layer, a little bit more of the sawdust. If you have another layer of pots that you can fit in your barrel, depending on the size, you could do another layer. For my smaller barrel, I typically only get 1 layer in when I'm firing for color, just because it tends to fill up a little bit more quickly with the addition of some of these other materials. Then, just like in your black and white smoke firing barrel, you'll want to put in some small wood for kindling and some larger pieces to get the fire going at the top. Different materials can be used to add colors to your pieces in your barrel fires. We have a download that has some ideas of colorants that you can put into your barrel, but you can also experiment on your own, as this is not a fully comprehensive list. Things like sawdust will make black, grays, and sometimes a little bit of a blue color. Other items that I typically use, because I have them handy, things like steel wool, copper wire that I wrap around the pots. I also sometimes will put some steel wool on and wrap it around with the copper wire to sort of hold it in place. But both of those will create some colors on the surface of your pot as well. You can also use salt. This tends to give a yellow color to your pots. I also have magnesium sulfate, which is also known as Epsom salt, because it's handy and I have it around my home. So I've tried that as well. You also can try things around your home like fertilizer for your garden. It has other materials in it that may cause colorants on your pieces. Or you can have students bring in things from home, things like peels from oranges or bananas. We have a lot of farms in our area, so I'll have students bring in cow manure, and depending on if it's grass-fed or grain-fed, the colors that come out on your pots can be different. We also have a lot of copper wire that was donated to us. Came on big spools like this, so I've taught my students how to strip that wire down and just take the copper pieces out. So we tend to use a lot of things that we already have around rather than going out and buying new things to add colorants to ours. But you could also do that as well. If each student wants to try a different colorant on their pot and you don't want them to reach into other people's projects, you can try a technique called saggering. Sagger involves taking a piece and wrapping the colorants on the piece with aluminum foil. So for instance, if I wanted to try the salt and the copper wire just on my piece, but a student whose piece may be in the barrel with mine doesn't want that on theirs, we would contain that within the aluminum foil. A thicker aluminum foil is better, or multiple layers, as it will start to break down as the heat gets a little bit warmer in the barrel. I'm just gonna put a little bit of salt in here and then wrap my piece in some of the copper wire to give some of the colorant to my piece. Once your pieces have been packed with your colorants that you're choosing for yours and wrapped around with the aluminum foil, then they're ready to go in the barrel as well. So you can put in loose pieces with the colorants sprinkled in around them, or you can stagger them and have the colorants right up next to each piece. I've also tried using just organic materials in a sagger. So this one had a leaf right here, and then I had wrapped it in aluminum foil, and the way that it burned just left a shadow of where the leaf was on the piece. There are lots of things you can experiment with when you're doing a barrel fire for colors. So once you have your barrel packed, we'll talk about how to actually fire the barrel and the timeline in the next video.